So today I wanted to talk about pruning, but the other end of pruning, something that normally people don't discuss that much. Usually pruning is like, which branch do I remove or head back so that we get more fruit? But then on the other end of pruning, you have a lot of material, and what do you do with it? It's very rarely addressed beyond chip it or throw it into a pile somewhere and then it'll sort of disappear. But it's actually, this is some of the most valuable stuff that you produce by growing trees, or that trees produce, and we want to make sure that we get the absolute best use out of it. So ramal wood chips, or ramal branches, just means branch. A ramal means branch. And this is where most of the nutrients of the tree are, in the leaves and in small diameter wood. In big cordwood, the ratio of carbon to nitrogen can be 500 to 1. Here it's more like 30 to 1. So this is basically compost material, and this is a black locust, so it's got a high nitrogen content to the leaves as well. So the problem is, let's say we're pruning, this is black locust, but it could be a fruit tree. You get right angles, you get angles between the branches, and if you just make a pile out of this stuff, once the leaves die down, there's tons of air pockets and it will just oxidize and dry out, even in a wet climate like what we have. A couple days of 90, all the leaves turn brown, they dry, they fall down, and the twigs can take years to decompose. But we can drastically accelerate that. On the one hand, we can turn this into fertilizer by accelerating its breakdown and getting it in contact with the soil. And then on the other hand, we can use it as a mulch to establish a new row of trees. So that's what I'm doing here. This is a big orchard where we have a lot of rows of trees planted out, and I'm putting another row in on the side here. This is what we did for the last row years ago, and now we're expanding. We're going to do another 2 rows here. And so heading into this, we're not going to dig everything up and till it. What we're going to do is chop everything back, leaving certain parts of trees just for more mulch in the future. We're going to chop it back and we're going to put it in this line. And so this is equidistant, spaced off of that row to make a new row. And what I'm doing is basically making a big compost pile with wood chips or wood branches. And so every tree is different, and what we need to do is take all of this and arrange it into a row where it can break down. We'll leave it over the winter, and then next spring we'll cut through the middle and plant into this, and it'll be a beautiful mulch row. So here is my preferred technique. This is the best way that you can do it if the tree is amenable to this. You just go up the branches, rip them off, and this is black locust, by the way, so this is very thorny, so I've got welding gloves on. And one crack in half, and that material goes onto the ground and gets stepped in. Take another one. I put the stem off to one side, rip upwards, crack. And you see that it's basically linear. There's nothing sticking out anywhere. And then you go like that. And it's not thick enough yet. In fact, just this little spot is going to absorb 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 more of those branches until it gets up here. Because when you build a compost pile, you can't just go put a few food scraps onto the ground that have it compost. It's got to be a real pile. So as you can see, as I'm working, we're taking all of this material to the east in a 30-40 foot wide swath and bringing all of that material here to accumulate on this row. And as we go down, we're hitting other species, and they're all going to be brought in towards this row. So it takes that much biomass, that much material to do this effectively, to stop these perennial weeds from coming through, compost over the winter, and then give us a new row to plant in the spring. Another thing I wanted to mention is that certain species rip like this, and it's very fast. As you can see, it may seem crazy to take the time to do this rather than throwing it in a wood chipper, but I'm going to talk about that later. Wood chippers need fuel, and you need to go get them, and this is actually rather quick, and the material is really perfect for occluding. If you have a wood chipper, everything breaks down even faster than that, so it's not actually ideal in certain senses. Now another species over here is an elm, and elm is a great tree that can take heavy pruning and produce lots of biomass, but unfortunately the branches just don't rip. Certain ones crack off, and elm, the way that they connect, absolutely doesn't happen. And so what I do in that case, and this was another one here, honeysuckle, that does the same thing, I'll take 3 or 4 or 5 branches and put them down like this, and then I come up from the base, walking towards the front, and just a few slashes up the side, and you're really slashing down into a pile here, so there's really it's not very dangerous with the machete. Few slashes down the side, and it gets all of those little side branches down in contact with the ground. So that works for a lot of plants that have funky right angles and don't want to get ripped and don't want to lay down flat. Because at the end of the work, what you need to have is a really thick pile. Look at how many branches are in there. Not even at the bottom yet. That's the minimum. And this looked a lot fluffier the day I put it down. This could even be higher, like that high. And that will keep the fungal life alive, keep the moisture in there all winter, and give us the breakdown that we need. So you really can't go too heavy with all that material. Anyway, if you don't do this and you just take all the prunings and put them in a pile, they'll just stay there slowly oxidizing, slowly breaking down for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, and you'll find that they get in your way and they're not putting any value into the soil. Here, all of this, as it breaks down, the rain is going to put all the fertility into the ground, and the trees that we plant in the middle of here are going to have all the fertility that they could use. And if you biochar this material, you burn it, you put half the carbon into the air, and you get none of the nitrogen, you get none of the phosphorus, potassium, other micronutrients. So this, to me, if you have small branch wood that you're dealing with, this is the best way to use it. It's a natural fertilizer, it's super high value, it's suppressing weeds, it does everything you want, and the only hard part about it is the time to get it compact and organized. And this is a very fast way, can be a very fast way to metabolize a huge amount of material and put it to use. I forgot to do a before and after, but I just took about a lot more than I expected to off of this peach and the apple, and doing the same kind of thing, just pruning a branch with a clipper and then ripping it so that I can put down the material right in contact with the ground. All these small angles, they just rip really easily. And then this is nice and moist, the ground is moist, there's a lot of moisture in the wood itself, and so this will break down really well, and over the winter the rain will push the fertility into the soil, and also mulch, obviously, the soil to keep it a little bit more warmer. The summer pruning here, this is a totally different topic of pruning, but I won't go into the part of pruning that is for making the apples produce more fruit, but just to reinforce the idea that if I had pruned off all this material and then, I don't know, just thrown it off to the area that I don't manage, I would be taking the fertility from the trees and putting it out to wherever. Of course, in this case, I'd actually be fertilizing the locusts, which are themselves a fertility source for the fruit trees. But what I want to be doing is cutting everything and putting it in this row and accumulating the organic material in this row here. I actually got big logs there to mulch out the mugwort and the other really intense plants that are here. So I'm going to do this with the fruit trees for summer pruning, which is for fruit production, but also for mulch and all that stuff. And then I'm going to be cutting back the locusts as well to put in here.